as I've worked with thousands of community builders now, it's very rare I hear anyone talk about their motivation for getting into community that wasn't rooted in experiences of loneliness and suffering around isolation in their childhood.
Welcome to this River Live session featuring David Spinks. He's a community strategist and author of the book, The Business of Belonging. Thanks for joining, everyone. Thank you especially to David for being here. I discovered you on Twitter a few months ago, so I'm a new fan, and just thought all of your content was incredibly articulate and clear, and has this good balance of warmth and business focused, because I think sometimes people can flip-flop on different ends of that spectrum. And then I had a long drive in the car and I looked for Spotify. In Spotify, I looked for a podcast that just had the word community in it. And somehow your Masters of Community podcast did not show up. It was some other random one that you were a guest on. And I just thought it sounded super smart, the things you were talking about. So I DM'd you on Twitter. And then somehow you agreed to come on this live session. So thanks for being here.
I'm very happy to be here. And I'm a big fan of everything you're building too, Rae. So thanks for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about your background? And I know you're in the middle of a sabbatical, so thank you for taking time from your pause in life. So I'd love to hear, straight from you, a little bit about your background and what you're up to now.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel pretty unpaused now, actually. I feel like
you're back in it.
I set out on my sabbatical with a formal end on the other side. And I feel in the last couple months, I've actually reached the other shore of my abyss, as I've been calling it. So yeah, back in flow with work and creating, and I can talk more about that later. But the quick of my background is I've been building community since I was a lonely middle schooler. I turned to video games, as many lonely middle schoolers do. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 was my game of choice. I became one of the top players in the world on that game. I started a clan that became the top clan in that game. We started a forum for the clan, and it became one of the most popular forums for the game. And so I was in middle school, suddenly managing an online community with tons of activity and trolls and competitions and just all this stuff that community people do online today. I was doing, I don't know how long ago that was, embarrassingly, IRC. AIM didn't exist yet, I don't think. So just to tell you how long ago that was.
Pre-AIM.
Yeah, we were all on IRC. And
what was your handle?
Spinks, but it was spelled SPYNX with the letters alternating in capital letters, because that's what you did in middle school. Yeah, my AIM screen name was System of a Spinks, because I was a big System of a Down fan.
Incredible. I don't even want to tell you what my
We could go around and share. It tells us a lot about each other.
Maybe that's an icebreaker.
It's a great icebreaker, actually. Now you have to share. Okay,
Sasha, I'll go last. I'll save the most embarrassing for last. Sasha, what was your earliest handle? Were you on AIM?
Is that AOL?
Instant Messenger. Yeah, we had every chat was its own.
I was Foot Candy, I think, because I started my first website as an AOL webpage, and it was called Foot Candy. So that was my handle for a long time, years.
Good work. How about you, Ezra? What was your early handle?
I remember my first email that I set up in '99. It was like my nickname Easy. And then I didn't know what else to put. So I put iNet, like internet, at hotmail.com. And it was just like, I didn't know what to do. So I just...
So dated. So cool. Yeah. Good one. I feel like Ezra Easy is you're gifted. You're in line for great handles. Just an easy setup. How about you, Kate?
I actually didn't have an AIM account. I went to a Waldorf school, so we didn't really do much technology. But my first email address was my dog's name, Sunny, and then some random numbers. So yeah.
Cute. Sunny. How about you, Aaron? I bet it was clever.
Wasn't my first, and it's not clever, but I will share my most humiliating one. And I don't have a good explanation for it. But at some point, I was Garbage Boy 502.
Okay. Okay. Good.
No
Robert?
explanation needed.
Yeah.
Sure. So my AIM name, I had a boring one. I think I didn't understand the idea of the handles. It was just my initials. It was RCY Lin, and that was taken. And it was just like 16, which was my soccer number. Like I didn't know the idea that you were supposed to be like Iceman or Maverick or something.
Okay. So that's what you would have done. Okay. Mine was four-wheeler chick. So bad. I rode, I'm from Maine and it's pretty rural, and everyone either dirt bikes or snowmobiles or rides a four-wheeler.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I see we learn a little something about, like, there's always some little insight into who you were at that time, how you saw the world. Awesome. Well, that was a good icebreaker. Thanks for sharing, everyone.
Nick Gray would be very proud, Rae.
Yeah, I
no
know.
name tags though.
But we don't have any name tags, but it is, you have your Zoom name tag, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so your sabbatical is basically done and you're already going back. So what are you working on?
I'm coaching now. So
Coaching. Yeah.
I didn't mean to become a coach. It just happened. I've been in a phase of deep surrender to just whatever wants to happen, and that's what happened. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm working directly with two primary groups. One are community founders, so people who are running community businesses, and the other are high achievers who are downshifting. I'm working with Steve Schlafman on downshift. So they're downshifting into a new season of life with greater presence and greater inner knowing, calm, alignment. For those of us who have been high achievers running on dirty fuel, like I'm not enough, I have fear, I need to be successful in order to feel like I'm enough, helping them shift into a place of enoughness and working from a place of alignment, which is the journey I've been on over my sabbatical over the last couple of years. Yeah, and then briefly before the sabbatical, I built 3 different companies, always with a community focus. I led community for a number of startups and conferences and just a bunch of different companies. My last company was called CMX. It is a community for community professionals, had about 20,000 community professionals, and a conference of about 1,000 attendees, over 60 chapters around the world. And so I started that 10 years ago. I co-founded it and stepped down. It was acquired 5 years ago, and then I stepped down into the sabbatical 2 years ago.
Congrats. Oh, I didn't realize your sabbatical. Yeah, okay. I didn't realize I haven't been following your journey until recently. So for all I knew, your sabbatical was started 3 months ago. I didn't realize.
Nope.
Got it. Okay. So you did get a good rest. You didn't just say you were going to have a sabbatical and then not have one. You did take.
Oh, I full send. Yeah. I stepped down from the company, and my only commitment was to not have any commitments. I wasn't going to take a job or start anything for a year. For a while, I started every day with a commitment to have no plans whatsoever. So it's whatever I woke up and felt like doing is what I would do. I wouldn't put anything on my calendar. If someone's like, let's meet up Friday, I'd just be like, let's see, maybe we will. And we moved across the country back to New York. We had our second kid. So I have 2 kids now. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of family time, a lot of solo time, some really, really intense things that I dealt with in my life that pushed me to some edges, and a lot of work on myself with therapy, IFS, internal family systems, as a form of therapy. I've been doing breath work, deeper meditation, nature immersion, just a whole range of practices that have helped me heal.
Anyone here know of this IFS thing? I haven't heard about this. Aaron? Yeah, feel free to unmute yourselves, guys, and just chime in. But
I have a handful of friends that it's been really helpful for. I mean, my understanding is it's figuring out different ways, like the kernel of it is different ways to talk to yourself, which feels very relevant for community builders who are where I feel like everyone's mad at you all the time.
Yeah, that's a good way to
It
put
is
it.
true because people only pipe up usually if they're upset. Like when
Mm.
people come on here and they're like, "Oh, I love your work." I'm like, "Really?"
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of parallels with community work, and it's been cool to see the journey I've been on of working on myself and how it connects to my work building community. The brief of IFS, internal family systems, is that we're all made up of parts, and each part has its own essential identity and needs and wants. There are no bad parts. So even though they may be bringing us anxiety or suffering, they're not bad. They're trying to protect us or help us. For me, I have parts like my high achiever part that's like really pushing me to like do more and find success. I have my people pleaser part. I have my conflict avoidance part. I have my creative expression part. I have my perfectionist part. And so whenever I feel anxious or really have a hard time making a decision, I can kind of tune in. And I did this work with a coach for several months where you learn to like tune in and recognize which of my parts wants to feel heard right now and feeling really agitated or triggered by something that's happening. And you get to talk to it and interact with it. So instead of just being like, I feel stressed because I don't have enough money, what do you do with that other than just kind of sit with that? In IFS, you get to almost like personify that story and it has an identity and it gives you an opportunity to interact with it and hear what it has to say and how it's trying to protect you. And yeah, exactly. Like the ones that are agitated are the ones like creating this intensity in your body. The ones that are feeling okay right now are generally just calm and quiet and just hanging out, just in like in a community. And so you can see the way for me, I've witnessed now how my parts have shown up in how I've built community, both in good ways and bad ways. And so if I have a part that's really craving reputation, and so now I'm coming to my community building with this story that I need to be perceived and respected widely in order to feel like I'm enough, that becomes part of the culture in the community, right? Because now I am essentially putting that energy in and setting that example as a leader. And now everyone who participates sees that story, they experience it, and they recognize it starts to take form in the space. So now members feel like, oh, in order to be appreciated or respected or feel like I'm enough in this community, I need to seek reputation as well. And that's how like our internal stories and parts essentially emerge as the cultural norms of communities that we're building.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, are you in a community about this? Like, where do we learn more and sign up?
I'm actually kicking off group coaching for community founders. So yeah, I'm just I coach one-on-one. I'm starting to figure out how to open that up to more people and make it more accessible. Yeah, I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had amongst community builders about this work, and it's not a conversation that's happening. So I've been feeling energy toward exploring that kind of space. The communities I'm part of one community that's called Founder Satsang. It's all founders who are on a consciousness journey. And I mean, that's been profound to experience what it's like to be in a community where everybody has a very strong, deep commitment to working on themselves, and they're aware of their stories and they're aware of their triggers. And if you're into conscious leadership, is a really wonderful book that I think every community builder should read. And basically you could be above the line, which is like open, loving, abundant, or you can be below the line, which is like you're in fear, black and white thinking. You have to be right. There's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. And to be in community with people who are aware of whether they're coming into this space as below the line or above the line, it's such a different dynamic, and it's so trusting, and people are like honest with each other, but they don't assume that there's some malintention when they get like feedback or critical feedback. Like it's opening my mind to what community could feel like if it's done truly consciously through leadership and through its membership.
David, when we chatted briefly on the phone, you said something that kind of struck me, and I'd been thinking it, but it is a little bit like the quiet part that a lot of people don't talk about, is community builders or hosts. Sometimes they're like trying to fill their own like lack of community or connection, or I don't know. Can you talk about that a little bit more? You said it much more articulately, that you'd kind of noticed something about some, not everyone, but some people come at community building in order to hopefully fill their own cup.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all trying to fill our own cup, and that's not a bad thing in itself. The analogy I use is like dirty fuel versus clean fuel. And so I recognized that I had been working and creating and building, tapping into a lot of dirty fuel. And for me, it's never been like all dirty fuel or all clean fuel. It's always a balance. Dirty fuel being this like fear of being alone, fear of not being loved, fear of not being enough. And so what a wonderful way to avoid ever being excluded or exiled, which was abandoned, which is a core fear of mine from childhood, than to put myself in the center of a community and build it and be leaned on by people. Right? You can't abandon me if I'm the leader. Turns out you can, and that was one of my crucible moments, was getting called out and essentially like canceled by members of my own community. So that really showed the core flaw in that story. And so as I've worked with thousands of community builders now, it's very rare I hear anyone talk about their motivation for getting into community that wasn't rooted in experiences of loneliness and suffering around isolation in their childhood. And that can be a beautiful thing, because it leads us to want to relieve that suffering for others. We want to build communities so that others aren't alone. And if it's coming from a place of fear and not enoughness, I need to do this in order to protect myself from not belonging, which also usually aligns with the story of, in order for me to belong, I need the approval of all these people in this community, and I'm not finding that belonging for myself. That's where your parts can start to play an outsized role in what happens in that community, because you're using it as a way to make you feel enough, rather than coming from a place of enoughness and then bringing in those parts to help you achieve and create the community that is coming from that place of abundance and love, which is a very, very different dynamic of leadership and community building than coming from a place of scarcity and not enoughness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. It's like a light shining, spotlight shining. I can sense, like, when I think of myself as starting community, it doesn't feel like I'm making up for childhood trauma. But then when you say it, I'm like, well, actually, I came from an extremely small family. Like, I have no cousins, no aunts and uncles. My mom has one cousin. And there's just like, there's obviously like a lot of shit, and toxicity. But one of the things that I find myself really kind of going in the complete opposite direction is around experiences and memories. My extremely small family, their idea of spending quality time together is just sitting around and talking and not doing anything. And it's not that I'm, constantly need to be busy, but I really like creating memories and like accomplishing something together, like going for a hike or doing something more memorable. And sometimes my family's like, well, that's too much work. Like they just want to, and then the accusation is like, oh, well, we're all enough. Like we don't need to do this extra thing because we're enough. But I'm like, I just feel like it all blends together and there's no memories being created. The time together isn't that high quality because everyone isn't necessarily a great, conversationalist or something. And so I find that when I'm out of balance, I'm like trying to create too much of an experience. And it's like, oh, we're going to run around and do all these zillion things, or, a costume party that's too much work, or, whatever. And so I feel that I feel like I have a lot of community in my own life, but when I'm out of balance, I'm like trying to go too far on creating an experience when actually just hanging out and getting takeout would be fine.
How do you know that it's too far?
You can just feel like when people kind of get turned off from doing too many things, you can kind of feel that energy. But then it's also about finding people who appreciate the same things as you. You know, like some of our extended family, like they don't like to dress up for our big Christmas party that we like to have every year, but my dancer friends love to, and they show up in backless red gowns and they go all out. So part of it is just finding people that share the same values as you, and, you know, letting people who are in your life but maybe aren't full on that, just accept them when they show up in their jeans and their ugly sweater. And not making like a big thing of it, but also seeking out people who like the same things that you like.
Yeah, it sounds like that's it, right? That's community building, is you feel a yearning towards a certain form of expression that's true to who you are. And maybe there are stories behind that of, I need to create experiences in order to feel like I'm enough or feel loved or
Be remembered.
Be remembered, have legacy. There's a lot of stories behind that, and maybe they're serving you or not, and that can be an exploration you can do. But ultimately, if you're feeling this authentic, abundant yearning to create experiences, and the people around you aren't aligned with that, then you just naturally start to seek other people, right? That's how communities emerge, is we have this yearning to connect, and you're not finding it. And so we just start creating it. It just happens. You almost don't even need to try when it's truly a yearning. And then those people who have been wanting to have these things and yearning for it, but they couldn't find it, when they see the way you describe what you're doing, it just immediately connects on this heart level and this mind level where they're like, this is what I've been yearning for. And so that's when people are like, how do we build community? It's like, I don't know. Like, what are you yearning for?
Yeah,
really,
it is hard
really tuning into that.
It is hard to just workshop community ideas for other people. Let me ask some of the Tim Ferriss hosts, because maybe some of you, maybe you didn't, and you don't have to lie if you did, but someone who hosted for Tim Ferriss meetups, does this resonate? Were you looking to meet a certain kind of person that you hadn't met before? Is that why you hosted? Or
yeah, so I actually quit my day job last summer, and kind of am in this in-between phase. I play music, so I've been doing that full time, but I have been trying to, I guess, meet cool people. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs are aligned with that. So I did jump in because I was like, this could be a great way to meet some really awesome people. Yeah.
And did you?
I did. And especially like through River, and Rae, I know you know Nicole. So it really, really awesome. So happy to be here.
I find the generic, because I can share another time, but when I was in Miami, I was just going to generic tech events, and it was just too broad of a topic to, I don't know. And then it got so big, and someone was always trying to sell me a house or a boat. And I just like, I find that the nicheness, like, it needs to be wide enough that you can actually find another soul in your town that's interested in this. You know, if it's too specific, that'll be hard to meet somebody. But if it needs to be niche enough that when you meet each other, you kind of have this magic moment. And I think, David, you called it like, or you refer to someone else who's called it like effervescence, or there's some
collective effervescence.
Yes, collective effervescence. And it feels just like a click or a spark or something. Ezra, did you host him?
Yeah, I was. I've been in Lisbon for a year and a half, and I hadn't gone out at all. And so I was really looking to go out and connect to some like-minded people. I'd been to startup events before, but startup aren't really my people. So I was like, well, let me, I saw this post for Tim, and let me host that or co-host that. And I was actually extremely surprised at the amount. 30 people showed up, and I was very surprised at the amount of people that I actually had something in common with and jived. The thing about Tim Ferriss is it attracts people that are kind of unconventional thinkers about life, whether they're entrepreneurs or digital nomads, or they're just like choosing a different way of life and trying to hack life systems. I didn't realize that that's kind of me, and I met some really cool people from all over, from finance to ecstatic dance teachers to a lot of people that I wouldn't think I would necessarily have things in common with, but there's like this core kind of value system that overlaps between Tim Ferriss thinkers or readers.
I'm hearing there's definitely a theme I see when communities click, is that you could almost pick anyone in the room and feel confident that you'd have a good conversation with them. Like when that's true, oof, you've tapped into the magic. Like that's it. I went to an event recently that was in New York for community builders, and it was like that. And at the end, everyone was sharing, and someone was just like, "I've never been to an event where there were no duds."
Yeah.
Like no dud. Anyone I talked to here, there was no duds, which is just a funny way of putting that idea of like, I like to think about it as like, what are the questions that you don't have to ask, because you know that everybody, just by nature of them being in the room, you already know what the answer is going to be, right? You already have assumed knowledge and understanding and alignment about every other person here. That's part of what I think creates that collective effervescence.
Aaron, so Aaron's a longtime friend of mine, and he's also the creator of Founder Fridays, the original New York Founder Fridays. I feel like you started Founder Fridays before, so early. Do you want to talk about the founding of it?
Well, I actually didn't found it. It was started basically for like 7-8 years in New York. Every Friday morning, a bunch of founders would come to a place, and we'd hear from a speaker it like consistently punched above its weight class. And then I spoke at it, and then they were like, "Hey, you don't have anything going on on Friday mornings because you're like a founder, so you won't have meetings, so you can just run it." But I mean, the reasons that I think it worked was because it was same time, same place every week. And like early on, it was like anyone in tech, but somewhere in the middle, we switched to saying, "Hey, it's only founders. Like you have to be a founder. No VCs, no service providers, operators. You're like borderline. You have to at least be like thinking about starting something." And I think that changed it, like to David's point, to increasing the likelihood that if you go into the room, it's going to be hard to have a bad conversation.
It was also at an ungodly hour for New York. It was like Friday mornings at 8 a.m., which is just a filter in itself.
Yeah, like self-selecting, but egalitarian at the same time. Like we haven't charged. I would say that another thing that reminds me of it, in a handful of cities, some people are doing these very early morning walks, which are like accessible, and they're the same time every week. But yeah, like there is a little self-selection because they are at a very early time, and if you don't get there on time, the walk leaves without you.
Yeah, makes sense. Sasha, were you going to say something?
I was, but now I'm wondering if you guys have been on any of those walks on Saturday mornings that Al runs, because that's another cool event that I keep hearing about. But I did a all-in podcast event in Raleigh, and what I loved about it is, while I don't think of the guys as multifaceted as Tim Ferriss, together they're as multifaceted as Tim Ferriss. So it was really fun to say, you know what, I could host this event and bring together a variety of different people who will all still like each other and want to talk about topics that I like to talk about. So it's like, you already know that they're going to disagree, but they just want to have conversations. And it's pretty hard to find people that want to have those particular kind of conversations. And when I hosted, it was amazing because it was a wide variety of ages. It was not a wide variety of genders, but it was a wide variety of ages. All having good, great conversations. It was really fun. So I just wanted to say that went around that way.
The all-in crowd tends to be more politically open-minded. And so people who are used to having all friends that are maybe hyper liberal, it is kind of refreshing to start being able to even just talk about different types of ideas on the political spectrum. I think that was one reason All In was kind of interesting. And yeah, I mean, for me, I'm in tech, but to me, All In attracts not just like startup founders, but other types of people that still are interested in the same topic, but it's not as like everyone I met at, typically when I lived in San Francisco, they're all developers. I don't know, it's just a little more broad ranging. And then Genesis is here. He's like an OG all in with me. Do you want to chime in, Genesis? Because I know you've been quiet.
No, just wanted to hop in here. Sounded like a good topic to listen in on. I have been on Elle's walks. Those have been really great. I think she does an amazing job of setting the intention at the beginning of these walks, and like she has like her whole weekly script of here are the ground rules and here's what we're gonna do and here's what we're all here for. Everyone goes around and does like a icebreaker, like what's your topic for the day thing, type of thing, and I think that's super helpful. For events that I've gone to that maybe kind of miss, maybe it's like for the same reasons that you're talking about, it's kind of people there for the wrong reasons, or not enough like activation energy, or like hey, here's this first thing that everybody's going to do at the beginning, where either it's like, hey, what's your favorite book, or what's a question, or what's a topic, or anything like that. I think all of that stuff goes a long way from what I've seen. But yeah, couple of things I'm curious about, or I don't know what other people have thoughts on about this, is just like, is it natural that communities are kind of more like ephemeral in terms of like, there's a lot of energy at one time at the beginning, and then it kind of just dissipates over time? Or like, what are and then sometimes, the host might there might be like some host fatigue where you start things off and then maybe you don't want to host after. I don't know if we want to dive into these topics, but those are kind of questions I have on my mind.
Love to hear what David has to say about it.
Sure, I can talk about that. Yes, it is normal. I've never seen a community that doesn't ebb and flow with energy. They're seasonal. Summertime can be hard because people have more plans and they're out more, and they look for more curated events that are indoors in the winter, or online communities in the winter. I've talked on my newsletter about like the concept of return on energy. So we have return on investment. If I put in X dollars, I need to get more out or else my business dies. Well, I think we also have return on energy. If I put energy into something, I need to get more energy out, otherwise I burn out. And the truth is, community building takes a great deal of energy. And we may have an abundance of energy right at the start to really like get this thing off the ground and moving. Maybe some of that initial energy fades, but then the compounding work of holding space for other humans continues to grow. The community grows. You have more people. Maybe you're doing less per human work and more operations kind of work. It can be emotionally taxing. It could take a lot of energy, and so eventually, if that ROE, if you're getting less energy out of each event than the amount you put in, you're gonna burn out and not want to keep doing it. So that's a part of why I also think focusing on sustainability for community leaders and really tuning into how much are you putting in, how much are you getting out, what are your boundaries, how much are you taking on emotionally, is really important if you hope to be able to continue to do this work over the long run.
I've noticed because I still kind of run the all-in community. I mean, sometimes it's busier than others, but I find that people who are just having a normal good time, they don't say much about it. And then there's like one or two bad eggs or toxic people who kind of drain my energy. If anything, when I'm out of balance, I can be too confrontational. I'm not a passive person. And so my approach in like the Slack and all in is like, when someone's being really crappy, I don't do like the 3 strikes. I don't have like a written code of conduct. It's just like, look, 5 people have DM'd me that you're being crappy. You're being crappy. Bye. And just like, I find that protecting myself and the flock, I guess, is just like a great way to just manage my energy and manage everyone else's energy. Because I just feel like, and then some people get really mad and they like call me a fascist on their way out, and they're like, everything's gonna be ruined, and you're a JCal, whatever, simp. And I'm just like, bye. And then it's great when they when they're gone. So just like the narcissistic boyfriend that just like when you break up with them, they're like, no one's ever gonna love you the way I love you. But I see a lot of community builders who are just they're so nice. And they're just like too nice for their own good. They're too nice for everyone else's good. And it's just like, sorry, man, like you're out here. Like you know exactly what you're doing.
I'm the nice guy. You know, I'm the one that if someone said those things to me, I feel it. It's really hard for me not to feel it and not to have a lot of emotional processing to do after that.
The first couple of times I did, and then I started witnessing a pattern where I could just identify the behavior where it's just like, you know, being crappy and confrontational to everyone, me saying, hey, can you please delete that comment? Like, please check yourself. And then them like doubling down and then them starting to call names. And I'm like, okay, this is just like a certain behavior. Like I can just see it coming from a mile away now.
Yeah.
And usually the first sign is that they always, it's like not, whatever you're doing is not enough. And they're just like demanding more. That's usually like the early signal that they're going to be like going down a path. Like I did these little t-shirts because I was just trying out this Shopify integration we built for River. So I just did some like wet your beak t-shirts or whatever. And this guy was like mad that we didn't have extra large or extra large or like whatever his size was. And I was just like, I explained to him, I'm like, hey, like I'm just testing out the Shopify integration. I'm like personally going to be like packing these, like it's just like a small thing, like, you know, and he was just horrible about it. And then sure enough, like 2 weeks later, I had to boot him from the group and goes out kicking and screaming. And they have no idea how much better everything is once they're gone, but it's great.
Yeah.
So just as a quick note, I guess and I think I saw a tweet from either you or Maggie Appleton is someone else I follow. I think I really like her stuff on X.
She's awesome.
And like gatekeeping, I'm a huge fan of gatekeeping. Like, yeah, I'm not talking about countries. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about just small private, groups, whatever. But when it comes to just the community stuff, this is not a generalized statement. I definitely do think, I think someone earlier brought up like segmentation. I honestly think that's even more than half the battle, just finding the right people, just setting the expectations out from that. That's been my own experience in the few meetups thing that I did before. So one thing I think you were asked earlier quickly about for the TIM organizers, I guess, Rae. And one thing I noticed this and also the collective effervescence comment, I guess, David, you made something interesting. So we had a smaller group. I think it was just like maybe 4 or 5 of us total here in Cincy. It was great. I still enjoyed meeting folks. There were 1 or 2 younger folks too. I feel here's kind of my take, kind of 2 observations, and I'm just curious how people respond to it. Like one is I wish so much River had been around like a good decade like earlier. I feel it's kind of I spent a lot of time in Meetup. I was living in Jersey at the time. And I just remember, I think a lot of the loneliness or stuff you spoke about earlier, David, right, and folks, I think really spoke to me then. That was a lot of my motivation for even going to meetups. I don't know if I co-hosted, but I was definitely like part of a core. I think that's normally the way it works, is there's kind of a core group that needs to emerge. There's usually just one driver, how I've noticed, like in the very beginning, and then kind of lives or dies on his or her, efforts. This is kind of what I've noticed in the very beginning. There's that. The one thing I do, by the way, like about River is, at least on the Tim one that I've been on, I don't follow the all in guys, but by having that body of work, that podcast, that everyone has that common ground to bootstrap the talking really, really helps. I mean, normally it's like tech related or something focused, but this one, it's almost like everyone read the same book or something, because then you can actually talk about favorite guests and favorite moments in specific episodes. And I think that hyper granularity is very different actually about the one Tim one I went to as opposed to the other one, like Tech Meetup or whatever, VC stuff. I think that's a huge thing. But so I guess getting to the question is, I think that the difficulty I've had is I've found now it's like a decade, like I feel like a lot of the energy, at least personally I'm speaking, and even looking around me, I've kind of, like at this point I've gotten married, I work at a place, I'm grateful where I work at now, and I feel like I'm lucky to land at a place who I vibe with the people more, and kind of that need or that driver, maybe you call it, if I've been understanding you correctly, David, like kind of burning dirty fuel isn't maybe, like there's no dirty fuel left anymore, David. And I'm not quite sure how, because I'm still interested in meeting, people, and especially like folks who follow the same podcast. But now with other competing priorities, like all of us, family stuff.
Your bar is higher.
Yeah, exactly. I don't quite like have I just aged out of it, David? Is there a season for all things? Is there something else you would suggest tapping into? I'm genuinely curious how people go about this over, because those are some personal observations I've had. Like I can't quite muster the same energy to be more succinct about this the way I used to, and just any thoughts or suggestions you might have, for those of us maybe a little where we are.
Where does this story come from that you should be organizing community?
Again, I'm just speaking personally. I like the idea because, again, to be clear, I'm grateful for the wife, for the people I work with. But there are things I would like to discuss, Tim Ferriss stuff, episodes that I haven't quite found. There's a part of curiosity. It comes, I guess, more from a place of curiosity, of exploration than anything else. And there's not quite those people in my immediate circles who I do rely on for many other things. Movie club, other stuff, and stuff like that.
Right. So you're yearning for the connection, but you don't feel the energy to organize.
Yeah. In summary, I guess I'm just wondering if there was some. I'm more rambling than anything else. I guess I was just sharing kind of my own experience with. I like the idea of it. I like being in one, hosting and finding, especially at the very beginning. Like, yeah, I'm not quite sure I can marshal the necessary whatever resources to get over that activation energy. I'm sure it's great on the other side. I'm just not sure I have like the reserves at this point. If that makes sense. And I'm curious. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't think anything's wrong with that. It sounds like you're pretty in tune with what's your priorities in life, and you know that there's a connection that you're yearning for, but you're not willing to prioritize the energy for it over your family and your work and the community you have. So sometimes it's just like, I noticed that I'm feeling a yearning towards that kind of connection. I don't feel motivated enough to take action on it today. So just sit with knowing that, and maybe that unfolds into you're now aware of it. So when an opportunity comes up, maybe you'll be more attuned to see it. I would also invite it sounds like there may be a specific form of community that you have in mind that's maybe more substantial and more complex and more work than you're willing to do. But a question I'd invite you to explore is, what is a version of this connection or community that you would have energy for? Could it be as simple as a small 4-person group that just like once a month you choose an episode from the podcast to talk about? Like, is there a simpler version of this container that helps you get that connection without needing to exert quite as much energy as you're envisioning?
I was going to say the same thing, like just finding a couple people to get coffee sometimes. Like, it doesn't have to be a whole ongoing, you don't even have to call it a meetup. It doesn't have to be like that heavy, I guess. And then it's just like, I also find that a lot of times I'll just suggest, I'll take the initiative on something small and be like, hey, do you want to meet for coffee at this time in this place? And it's extremely convenient for me. It's like, when it works for me, it's near my house. And then people say yes. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it doesn't have to be like schlepping across town and finding the most, I don't know. Yeah, I think something small, like really lightweight and small. I mean, Aaron Cohn and I have been with another friend of ours, Jay. We've been meeting pretty much without fail almost every Wednesday morning for like 4 or 5 years. I don't know. And the agreement is like, if I look like a raccoon because I just woke up, or Aaron's in the TSA line, like we just still like quick chat, even if you only get like 3 minutes, and we just quick chat. And then the consistency of it compounds. And then when like shit hits the fan, Aaron has full context on everything because we've been chatting regularly for 5 years or something. So to me, it's like, if you could find a way to keep it light but consistent, you might that's where the ROI might be for you personally.
Okay. No, thank you. No,
but yeah, I mean, I have like way less energy for crap. And like, I live an hour north of Boston, and I'm like, oh man, like when I was going to move up here, I was like, yeah, I'll go into Boston once a week. And now I'm like, once a month's good. I just like less and less interested.
I'm very much right now into really tuning into like what are you calling for? Like, what do you, when you're considering doing something and you feel tension around doing it, like the story comes of, I should push through it, just get it through. Like, I know I want that, so I should just push through. But if you could really tune into your body and feel like, does this feel aligned for me? And then have the courage to say no, even if there's a story that you should do it, but everything in your body is telling you that this is not something that feels easy or joyful or energetic. Say no, even if it's a project you've invested a lot into already. Just having that confidence in yourself, you end up finding things that you have a lot of energy for, and you cut out the things in your life that are draining you of energy, and it's transformative.
I can share it around after. I have a blog post around like managing energy versus just time. And there's this concept of like, there's things on the calendar that take an hour, but like, do they really take an hour? Because now you're all wound up about it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I have like in my little bullet journal, I have little numbers that I put next to things. If it's something small, it's like a 1-pointer. If it's medium, it's 5. And if it's big, it's like 10. And I've just found over the course of years of doing it that, like, based on my dumb metric system, I can do 65-point weeks. And if I'm tallying up my week and it's a 100-point week, like next week's got to be 5 points or something. Like I burn out if my energy levels are going. And the things that cost me, the things that cost me energy are different than other people's. Like for whatever reason, travel is exhausting. I don't know why. I just sat the whole time on a train doing nothing. Why am I so tired when I check into my hotel? But I've just learned over the time that, like, you know what? Actually, traveling just wipes me out, even though I like doing it. That's fine. Public speaking doesn't wear me out. I don't know why. I don't really think of that much of it. So it's just this idea that, like, yeah, it was a 30-minute meeting, but I had to fire someone. It was like a different energy level than time. So that might be an interesting metric for people to track.
Yeah. I love that system. We should merge that with the ROE concept.
The ROE. Yes. Okay. I wanted to ask you about like the components or the ingredients for a great community. And I really felt this. I can share briefly what mine are, but I think one that's missing sometimes is, like, you talked about status, like the ability to, when you are contributing, to like gain status within a community. And I found the most frustrating thing about the tech community when I moved to Miami is, like, it felt like no matter what I did, how much I contributed, I just like couldn't move up in a way. And not that I was like trying to move up in like job title, but like doors weren't opening. I wasn't meeting, like it just, like nothing happened. Whereas I felt like San Francisco and New York were so much more merit based, where if you kind of showed up consistently and, built something impressive, like someone would notice you and be like, hey, let me make an introduction or something. And that just like never happened in Miami. And it really taught me like a painful lesson about status and how people need to be able to move up. Otherwise, it's just like a weird cult run by like one person. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I would probably adapt a little bit of what I wrote in the past. I think at the time I had a more narrow view that everybody cared as much about status as I did. I would probably adapt that now to say that if status is something that members are yearning for, then having a community that allows them that upward mobility is really important. If status isn't what they're yearning for, less relevant. There's always going to be some elements of social status, and someone who gives a great deal to the community, it's reasonable for them to expect recognition and acknowledgement, which you could call status.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole like tall poppy syndrome is what they call it in like Australia and England, where if anyone goes too high, they kind of get cut back to level. That's a cultural norm, right? So when I think about that, I think about what are the inputs that resulted in that cultural norm emerging in the Miami community, and what's different about San Francisco or New York that some different culture emerged, right? I've been writing and researching a lot about this concept of emergent community design, and so anything that's a cultural norm like that, I think is almost always going to be some sort of inputs that resulted in this happening, which again may start with the leaders and their own stories.
Yeah, I felt it quite strongly, like just doors locked. I don't know. It was so interesting compared to, because I've lived in San Francisco for 7 years and then New York for 3, travel a lot. So you can kind of like feel, you can feel the vibes, I guess.
The people in positions of status and power in those communities may have stories around scarcity, around status, where if somebody else gets greater status or starts reaching them or surpassing them, then that means they're not enough. And so consciously or subconsciously, they start closing doors to prevent other people from threatening their enoughness.
Wow.
Is my guess.
Damn. Wish I had talked to you about this like much sooner. Yeah, much sooner. Aaron, you got something?
Yeah, I got a quick one. I know that the tools and platforms that you use, probably not the most important thing. And like we love River, we love like I feel like a lot of tools out there should be making life easier for community builders, but a lot aren't. A lot are kind of like stitched together, and I feel like that kind of contributes to some of the burnout. Are there, and you kind of have like your old school ones like WhatsApp, Discord, Slack that are like chaos and a lot, but like people are already there. And then you've got these vertical all-in-ones, Circle, Discourse, that sort of thing, but like hard to get people over there. Do you have any like newer thoughts on platforms and tools now that you're on the other side?
Yeah, I feel all that pain. And the reality is this is what emerged in the capitalist container that we built all these tools within. And so the tools with the greatest resources are Facebook, which is WhatsApp, and Slack, Discord. They're built they have massive product teams. They really like perfected the like how people connect or engage, the UX of an online chat experience. They've perfected it, right? As much as it could be perfected. They've A/B tested and improved and optimized to no end. And they're free. You have no control of the data. So that's just the business model resulted in the ones with the most resources also being the ones who frankly just care the least about community builders, unless it's driving them more ads.
Right.
And then you have much less funding for community platforms, which there still has not been even like one unicorn that's a community platform. Like it's just not the best market for if you want to build a runaway SaaS success. And so resources are less. Community is an inherently complex product, so they just ending up being clunky because they have to add more and more and more and more and more. They're enterprisey generally as well. They'll end up making money, so they start catering to these like bureaucratic enterprise needs rather than the end user. Like they're selling to an executive, not to the person who's writing their comment.
Yeah.
And so
what do we use? What's the answer?
Offline, baby.
When you
face
start
to face. I think what you said up first is the most important thing, is that at the end of the day, the tools are in service to the community, not the other way around. So when I see people launch a circle and then they're like, how do we build this community? I already know they're coming at it from a flawed perspective, because now they're designing community around circle rather than who are the humans, all the things we talked about before around creating collective effervescence. If you have that, then it's just how do we make it as easy as possible for them to talk to each other? And maybe WhatsApp is fine for that, or River, or whatever tool it makes it possible for them.
I can be River. I can't build a messaging app on top of an event app. Events are already hard enough.
That's the thing, but eventually you'll feel pressured to, right? And companies do. And I worked with Bevy for a few years, and they just started adding all of like the chat stuff now to event stuff. Like I've seen it, the same cycle happen so many times. They start off simple and clean. Even Circle's getting a lot clunkier now. So
no, for sure. Yeah, I'm like, I can barely build an events app, let alone messaging.
Yeah. It's the reality. The reality is we have not ideal tools to try to build something beautiful and connective.
And so, like, I'm seeing this with River, like the crypto community, they love Telegram. They're so good at Telegram and Discord. And I'm like, I don't know if it's just my age or what, but I'm like more of a Slack WhatsApp girl, so it's all kind of relative. So we're coming up on time. And the last time I did one of these with Nick Gray, he came out with this cool hack tip. So I'm going to try this with you all, if it's okay. You can let me know if you don't want to. But since it's a small curated group, I was going to send an email to everyone who joined. And there'll be a 24-hour reply all window where you can say, hey, this is me, this is what I'm doing. Like some people are talking about these walks in Austin. So I'll spare David's inbox, but for anyone else who joined in, if you would like to be on the reply all, let me, if you don't want to be on it, that's fine. But yeah, 24 hours.
I want to be on the reply all.
You want to be on it? Okay. 24 hours to kind of like say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm working on. You can pitch your thing in any ways you want to connect. I noticed some people want to do this Austin boardwalk thing. Some people happen to be in White Plains, New York, which is crazy. I'm up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So sounds like everyone's okay with being on that. But yeah, strict 24 hours. You'll be on the naughty list if you wait 48 hours. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Can I add a question to it?
Please.
What's bringing you joy in your life right now?
Okay, that's the prompt.
You could also pitch, but I'm curious on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So the prompt, I'll send the email. That'll be the prompt.
Did you have a different prompt? I didn't mean to smother.
No, I didn't have. This is the plan is unraveling. No, because I don't think everything is like needs to be a meetup or a WhatsApp group or I think Nick is right there. Well, this is fantastic. I'm going to keep doing this format where it's like half of a podcast, half of a group session, because somehow it manages to stay small and delightful. Maybe eventually we'll get big enough and I'll have to do like a vetted, pre-approved list or something. I don't know. But I just think it's cool to get to speak with really impressive people like David and just understand how he thinks and actually chime in and ask questions. So thank you for participating in this kind of weird, I don't know what to call it. So I've been calling it a live session, but it's not really a podcast, but it's not a webinar because there's no slides. So who knows?
Live pod.
It's a live pod, a small live pod. David, thank you so much for all of your work in community. Thank you for articulating so many ideas. It's informing how I think a lot about what the heck I'm building and what we're doing in person. Is there anything I didn't ask you or anything you want to share? I mean, everyone should read this book, The Business of Belonging. This is David's book. Sorry, confused. Anything else? You got your coaching sessions? Like, how can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, just davidspinks.com is my website. I write a regular newsletter and all about both community design and consciousness and the coaching. That's my life simple right now. So the best way to stay in touch with my work is probably just through the newsletter. Amazing. Okay, I'll include that in the email when we send this out, and then I'll be featuring an edited version of this in my River newsletter. Awesome. So thank you for joining me. Thanks for taking the time, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rae. Thanks, David.
Spending this time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you all.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.